Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is ChessRabbitt, and welcome to the show where I think I'm Bobby Fischer and you're not. Anyway, today we're gonna be doing a game that I did not too long ago on chess.com. Let me flip the board because I was black, and here we're about to see a game that I played that I thought I was in trouble, and then I um, we went into the end game and. I pretty much pulled out a miracle because of my opponent's mistakes. He made some mistakes. I made some mistakes. Of course, we did because we're not grandmasters. So let's go on with the game. So here we go. E4, E6. You know how I feel about the move E6. Like all the time, 100%. I will show you guys some games where I didn't play one E6. Uh, whether they're losses or wins or whatever, we'll see. I tried to do a couple of matches, but I don't play E6. We go D4, D5, E5. Again, it's French. Queen six, putting more pressure on the D pawn. Right here at this pawn I'm talking about, D4. Knight F3, relieving the pressure on the D pawn. Knight C6, putting more pressure on the D pawn, and pretty much that's the way you play this opening. This it's not weak, but you want to provoke weaknesses by taking on the D4 square, and then you want to come and later attack the E5 square. And that's Black's major in this opening. That's his theme that he wants to play. B3. This is and I have no idea why my opponent played this move. Maybe to perhaps he had thoughts of moving B3 and then moving the pawn up to C4, attacking the pawn on D5. I really don't know. I'm only speculating there, but that's what I think his plan may have been. Knight D7. Of course, I always say this move. Most grandmasters will play the move knight to H6 and then bring the knight to F5. I usually play the knight to E7 first and then bring it to F5 to attack the D4 square. So that's how I do it. The only reason why I do it is because once it's on H5 here, then it could be attacked by this bishop. Now, since most grandmasters are not, and since most grandmasters don't like to trade off their bishops for knights, um, they don't have a problem with moving the knight to the H6 square, and this bishop can still protect this pawn here. But lower rated players will probably take on that square, so that's why I go knight G E7. C4. Like I said, he was moving the pawn up, so that was his idea, and that's exactly what he played. C takes D4. C takes D4. Knight takes B5. Bishop B4 check. I had to play this bishop B4 check move because I wanted to put pressure on the king and make sure that the pressure stays on the king. Bishop D2. Trade the bishop for bishop. Bishop takes bishop. Queen takes bishop. So my opponent castle. Queen D7. Bringing my bishop hopefully to the B6 square where it can be traded off on one of these squares along this diagonal. Well, maybe I should go all the way to here. So it could be traded on one of these squares along that whole big diagonal there. So that's the reason for that move. Queen B3. Undoubtedly, my opponent could probably play for a quick checkmate here by going to knight to G5 and then queen takes H7 checkmate. So I had to parry that. So that checkmate threat is parried. Attacking the queen and the bishop. So trading a knight for a bishop in this position is very good for me. Queen E4. Knight takes E2. As you can see, the knight is checking the king. Queen takes e2, knight e7. Played this move to knight e7. Well, as I play, I usually try to do a couple things when I see my opponent move. Now let's highlight this square. I do a couple things when my opponent moves. When my opponent moves a piece, such as I did here, I try to figure out three things. One of the things I try to figure out is where can the piece go from there? Okay? Where can the piece move from that point? And maybe that's what he's trying to do. If I can't see a good continuation of what he's trying to do, then I say, well, the square that he left from, what advantage is he getting there? He vacated that square for a reason. So if he has no real reason to move this knight, and it's not going, the next square isn't all that valuable, then why did he vacate the square? Well, I vacated the square because I wanted this bishop here to go to this square to attack the queen and to attack the rook. So that's why I played that move. Knight e7. Rook d1. Bishop b5, and my opponent actually allowed this. Knight c4. Bishop takes c4. Queen takes c4. Rook c8, attacking the queen. As you can see, as the computer's arrow suggests, attacking the queen. Queen takes d4. Knight f5. Queen takes b6. A takes b6. Rook b7, attacking this pawn. Protecting the pawn. Rook b8. Rook c1. Rook f d8. Relinquishing pressure on this square. Rook c d1. Rook takes. King f8. Now that most of the pieces are off the board, the queens are off the board, we're in the end game, the king becomes valuable. So it's time to put the king into the game. Knight d4, trade, rook takes, rook c8. Of course, I need to control this file here, so rook c8 to me was an easy move because I like to control the open file. My opponent already has the file that he's controlling. He's controlling the d file, so if my opponent controlling the d file, I need to control the c file, so we're both a little bit equal as far as that's concerned. f1, king f1, rook c1 check, king e2, rook c2 check, rook b2, rook takes b2, king takes d2, e8, king c3, king d7, king b4, and king e6. Interesting to note, from this moment here, I blitzed out all of these moves. I wanted my king to get to this square as soon as possible. So I just pretty much pre-moved all of those moves regardless of what my opponent was going to move, because I kind of figured my opponent would put his king in front of this pawn, so he would be doing the same thing. So I just blitzed out those three moves. f4, f6, g3, b5. Here I had to be careful. I was running out of tempi, and I'm definitely going to run out of more tempi than my opponent would before my opponent would run out. So I was watching a chess video from Chess Network where he illustrated a game where this king was moving back and forth, back and forth, back and forth to provoke a draw in a game. That was the idea. So I had to do the same thing. At first I was thinking about moving this b pawn, b7 to b6. I'm glad I didn't, because I wouldn't no longer have that tempo going back and forth, back and forth. So what I was doing was pretty much waiting for my opponent to move his pawns to run out of tempo as I go back and forth, and then I could either accept the draw or try to wait for my opponent to make a mistake and then try to go for on the attack. a3, king b6, h3, king c6, and as you can see, the back and forth movements. g4, king b6, e takes f6, G takes F6, F5. Here I had a long think. Here I was saying, well, if I just happen to move my pawn up here, what would happen? Well, let's just say my opponent plays this, and because I don't want to move any of my pawns right now, I play this, and my opponent comes here. Now, at this point, what do I do? Do I take here, and my opponent can get a queen before I do? Do I take here, and then that way my opponent can just move here, move there, and then I would have to try to come over and stop this queen, or can I stop it? Let's see if I can stop it. Yeah, okay, I can catch this pawn, but then my opponent can play here and then take this, and I don't know, maybe those are winning chances, I don't know. But anyway, at that point I decided to take, and now this pawn are going to stop each other. Pretty soon he's going to run out of tempi with this pawn because I have endless tempi here on these two squares, and he's going to have to push something. C6, knight C3, knight C5, B4 check, D5, D3, E5, king E3, still going. Cancel that. King takes F5, King F3, King E5. Interested to know, I didn't want to go on this side of the board, just the short side, because I didn't want my opponent's king to come over here on the long side and come back and attack my pawns and quite possibly have two passed pawns. So I tried to keep my king on this side of the board, the long side of the board. H4, F5, H5. Now, he only has king moves at this point. Any pawn move, which this is the only pawn move he can make, would result in a take, and then this resulting structure with these two pawns would offset each other. So he would give me a passed pawn. So my opponent has only relegated right now to king moves. King E6, King F4, King F6, King F3, King G5, King G3, F4 check. Probably a mistake. But then again, I didn't want to. Well, I probably could have taken on this square. Let's see. King takes H5. King to F4. King to G6. Yeah, I could have taken H5, and that would have been very decisive. I had two passed pawns on this side. Even if he tries to come over here too and take these pawns will just, yeah. So that was winning. So King takes H5 was winning there, as far as I'm concerned. F4. King F5, King F2, E4, King E3, King E2, sorry, King E5, King F3, King F5, King F2. Tried to do a bit of a triangulation so I can move my pawn up. It didn't work. We pretty much got into the same position we were in before. So sooner or later I just decided to move my pawn because the triangulation didn't work. So now I decide to come over here and grab my opponent's pawns because he had to do a little extra move here because he couldn't go straight from this square to here to there to attack the pawn. He had to go about the roundabout way. So I had a tempi here. And here is the coup de grace of where I win. Once I move here to get a pawn, my opponent is in check. And my opponent has to get out of check and also keep this pawn in its sights. So King G7, Queen takes H7, check. King takes A7, B5, and now the king cannot catch the pawn. I queen my pawn, King D2, King E4, relegating the king to this side of the board, the short side of the board. Notice that I put my queen a knight's move away from the king. This is very important. My opponent resigned here, but it's very important to keep your king a knight's move away from the king. So let's say play continues, king c1. Your next move would be king e2. Once again, keeping the queen a knight's move away from the king. So the king at this point only has one square to go to, and that would be here. And then you would move to d2, keeping the queen a knight's move away. Now at this point you don't want to follow the king another step because that would be stalemate. So you keep your queen on the square, move the king up, you move the king up, and the next move would be mate. Whether you can mate on this square, or you could have went to, well, you could have just went to that square and checked, and that would have been mate. And here is mate. So it's very important to keep the queen a knight's move away from the king, and you can drive it to the corner, bring the king up, and checkmate your opponent. Uh, Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching this video. I'm ChessRabbitt. Stay tuned for some more videos on this YouTube channel. Make sure to leave a comment, and I see you next time. Thank you and have a nice day. Bye bye.
Play chess with ChessRabbitt.